Have you ever wanted to add a countdown timer to your Zoom call? Maybe you want to let people know exactly how much time they have before you're starting your presentation. Maybe you have a break built into your session and you want people to know exactly when you are going to resume. Or perhaps you've done something like I have in the past where you have a timed activity and you want people to know exactly how much time they have to do that activity. These are all some of the examples that I'm going to show, and I'm going to show you how to set this up. So today's episode is all about countdown timers for Zoom. Now, before I get into this, I do want to share that I'm not actually going through the steps to connect your virtual camera from your streaming software into Zoom. That's how we're doing this. If you haven't seen the video yet on how to do that, you can check on the link in the description and see exactly how to connect something like OBS or Ecamm, a streaming software, using the virtual camera in Zoom. And that's how we can add these overlays and these countdown timers. So what I'm going to show today is how do you actually set up your countdown timer, and then how can you add graphics to it? And I'm even going to show you an example of how you can create an animation to go with your countdown timers. So I'm pretty excited about today's episode. I think it's going to be fun. If you are here, I'm seeing a few of these messages come through, but please let me know, do you use countdown timers? Have you done this yet? Have you incorporated it in Zoom? Or maybe you have been on a Zoom call where they have incorporated countdown timers. So if you are new around here and you don't know who I am, my name is Kat and I help people to create more professional and engaging online presentations. I really want us to do better by the people in our Zoom calls so that they're not boring and that they feel fully engaged. Now, before we get into all of the countdown timer fun, I did want to say that if you are here on this channel watching this, there's a good chance that you are someone who's invested in really elevating the quality of your presentation. So I'm really excited to share that I'm actually launching a new version of my Elevate Your Online Presentations training. So this is a live training. All of the details, you can get them both in the description below or going to katmulvihill.com/elevate. So this is actually going to take place over 4 sessions. So you learn a little bit at a time, you get to practice, implement, test it out, and then come back and you can get that real time in person, on Zoom feedback. And so this is a great opportunity. And anyone who joins, not only will you actually get some graphic download packs, including countdown timers, you're also going to get access to my brand new community where I'm going to do monthly question and answer periods for any of the students who take my training. So go and check that out if that is something that you are looking to do, if you want that extra bit of customized help and to get some of that feedback. All right, so let's get into this. We're going to talk about countdown timers. So the examples that I think of, and this is what I think when I'm using a countdown timer, I might use it at the start. This is especially helpful if, you know how when you have a Zoom call, people kind of take their time getting onto the call. Not everyone is usually signed on exactly in time to start. That's just the reality that we live in. So occasionally what I will do is choose the actual start time. Maybe it's a few minutes after, but whatever you do, pick that and then you start your countdown timer. So maybe you start at 10 minutes before you start, before most people are signing on. And then when they show up, they can actually see, oh, okay, this is exactly how much time I have. And then if somebody signs on, let's say a minute or two late, they'll actually see that the presentation hasn't actually started yet. Now, if you are coming from the outside and someone else is hosting the call, talk to them in advance. Say that, hey, I might use this countdown timer. Is that okay? And let's decide the start time that we actually want if you are not the one running the meeting. Also, breaks. This is a great way for people to know exactly how much time is left, especially if you are across different time zones. You might say, okay, it's this time now. Let's meet again at this time. Well, if you have a countdown timer, it just takes the guesswork out of it. Someone can just look at their screen and see exactly how much time is left. So I really love countdown timers for breaks. And then the other is timed activities. Maybe you are asking someone to go and do something, to write something down, to come up with an idea. You can tell them exactly how much time they have to do the activity. And the bonus is that because you are using a graphic, you can actually have the instructions on the screen right beside the timer. And I'm going to show you an example of how you can do this and kind of have some fun with it. So those are some of the reasons. Are there any other reasons that you might see using a countdown timer? Because these are some of the ways that I use them and what I might recommend. The other thing is that I don't actually use countdown timers in the majority of my Zoom calls. Typically, if I'm having a Zoom call, I'm meeting with a group, I don't worry about setting up a countdown timer. It's not always necessary, but you do want to think, who is your audience? Who is going to be in this meeting? And would they benefit from having a countdown timer? Is it going to help their experience? Because if you're just meeting with a group of people on Zoom, you don't need to count down to tell them when they're going to start. But if it is a more formal presentation and maybe you don't know the group and it's more of a production, that's where I would probably think to put this type of thing into your production. So how does this look? What are some examples? So one is an example where you can actually have the timer on the screen with you. So here you can see I've got a countdown timer. It says exactly when we're going to start. If somebody were to join the call, they could see exactly how much time is here. And I have it set so that as soon as I land on this scene, it will start counting down. So it's sort of automatically set. I don't have to start the timer. It will do it as soon as I go to that countdown timer screen. And this, having it beside you while you are on screen, is a nice way to be able to engage with the people who are starting. You can say welcome, write your name in the chat. You can kind of give them an instruction. You can ask them how their day is doing, but they can always see when the presentation is starting. Let's look at another example. So here is where you might actually say, okay, it's break time. And then you can tell people exactly when they are going to want to come back. So anytime they glance at their screen, they're going to see that it's break time and they know exactly how much time is left. Now let's look at an activity example. So this is actually something I have done before with some of my classes that I've hosted, where I have a very specific activity and I list the instructions on the screen while I'm still here. So you can see that I'm still here. It's this picture-in-picture concept. So I will actually walk through the instructions. Now, having the written instructions is really good for people who don't process information auditorially. That sounded weird, but we have people who are more visual. So for them to be able to see the instructions is helpful. Also, if you say the instructions once or maybe even twice, often people will stop and it's time to do the exercise and they think, wait, what are we doing now? I know I have absolutely been guilty of that. So you can have these instructions and you can actually walk through, maybe you can answer a question. But then when it's actually time to do the activity, this is where you can take yourself off the screen and you can have your countdown timer. The thing that I love about this is that you are not a distraction. People don't see you kind of waiting for the 5 minutes while they do their exercise or activity. In this way, it's kind of nice that you remove that. Now, yes, there is a clock counting down, but if a person wants to refer back to the instructions, they can do that. They can also see exactly how much time is left. So this is an example of how you might get creative with doing something like a timed activity. So those are some examples. So let's actually get into how do you actually set them up? So there are two components to your timer. There is the actual countdown, which is built into your streaming software. So if you're using something like Ecamm or OBS, and those are the two that I'll show you, you are setting that timer up in that software. The other component is your graphics. And that is where you can get creative. You can add whatever you like. And I'm going to show you how to create a couple of those animations. But this is where you want to bring those two components together. So first, let's focus on setting up the timer. So I am going to do a demo mode. And before I do that, I just want to make sure everyone's going to be able to see this because I recognize that my demo mode on my computer is often really large. So let's enlarge this for you. There we go. That's better. Okay. So I'm going to show you my screen and let's pop into live demo mode. So here is my primary display, and this is where I have Ecamm running. And let's actually just move this over a little. Okay, so this is my Ecamm demonstration. So right now I have nothing on this scene and I am going to add my countdown timer. Now the countdown timer, just like any other graphic, this is an overlay. And so in Ecamm, if you come down to the left part of my screen, you will see a little 3, 2, 1. That is your countdown timer. When you click that in Ecamm, you will see that it starts counting down. You can change the colors, and I'm going to change this to 5 minutes. As soon as I change it in this duration, then you'll see the option in the countdown. This is where you can also start to set your fonts. So you can choose which font you want. You can choose your thickness. Maybe you want that to be a little bit lighter, a little bit thicker. And you can also adjust the size. Now you can adjust the size here where you can make it a little bit smaller or bigger, but you can also do that directly on the screen. The other thing is that you have a few options. So you could add a background if you wanted to. You can change the radius of the background, etc. You can add a shadow. There are different types. So I choose countdown for an amount of time because that is what we are doing in this example. And you can also in Ecamm click this button if you want to go to the next scene as soon as this is finished. So for example, my countdown timer I use before my live streams is set to go to the next screen or next scene as soon as it is finished. So this is a nice option to have. You can check that off. And so let's do this, and we're going to say add. So now you can see that the time pops up on my screen and I can position it wherever I like. And this is just a simple example. Now, I don't have a graphic right now, like you saw in the examples. We can add a graphic separately, but this is how you set up your timer in Ecamm. So now let's leave demo mode, and I'm going to show you in OBS how you set up OBS. So here we have a blank scene. I have nothing else on this scene, and we are going to add the countdown timer in OBS. So we are going to first, in OBS, what you have to do is actually add some text as a placeholder to tell OBS where you want your countdown timer to go. So we are going to add some text. I'm actually going to call this timer placeholder because that's what it is. And here we see this giant timer. Now, my timer is actually already set up, which is not ideal. Let's cancel this, and I'm going to give it a different name, because I was practicing. Obviously, I was practicing for all of you because I want to do this right. So let's call this TP1, timer placeholder 1. And now we have a blank slate because I didn't already set this one up. So this one, let's write timer. And this is where you can select the font. Do you want to change this? Do you want this to be lighter? Do you want the size to go down? Let's make it a little bit smaller. And you can choose the color. What color do you want it to be? All of this is done in the text. So this is where you're deciding what your timer actually looks like. So now we have this on the screen. I'm just going to place this in the middle. Here's our timer placeholder. So the next step is that we now want to bring in the timer. And this is actually a tool. So in OBS, you're going to click on Tools at the top, and you're going to click on Scripts, which I realize my face is covering, but it's scripts. That is what you're going to pick. So now this scripts window shows up here. And because I have already set up a countdown timer before, it says countdown.lua. The first time you do this, it's not going to be there. So what you will do is you'll click plus, and the plus will actually open your file folder and bring you to exactly where the built-in OBS scripts live. And you will see countdown.lua. That is what you are going to choose. And then it will be here in your loaded script. Now you're going to choose the duration. So let's say 1 minute. Maybe we just want to test 1 minute. Here is where you want to check what's the text source. So TP1, that is what I want. And you can actually see before I've even closed it that a timer has started. And there's another thing in OBS called final text, which is what do you want to display when it's over? And I've played around with a few different options. So I personally put 0.00 as the final thing to show up. And I'll tell you why in a second. It's because we use cropping. Now let's say close. So now we have our timer. It is counting down. I put it to 1 minute. But personally, I think this is kind of ugly. I don't want all those extra zeros. But if you have used OBS before, you know that you can crop. So if you either use Alt on a PC or Option on Mac, this is where you can hold that down and drag this in, and you can crop. When it comes to the time, I usually like to click away to make sure I didn't accidentally. So sometimes when you think you've cut off everything, but when you go away, you see a little bit more. And actually the timer just, we want to restart this. So let's go to this scene and go back. So now we got this 1 minute. So let's make sure if I click off this, you can see a little bit of that 0. So now I want to click on it, hold down Option or Alt, and just come in a little bit tighter. And when I click away, I can now see a timer that I think looks better. So this, and then you can place the timer wherever it's going to be on your page. So that is how you set this up. So remember to put your placeholder using text, format the text. And if you want to change it, maybe we want this to be a different font, we can go in here and we can pick whichever font we want and update it. Oh, that went wrong. Maybe don't do that. That's on me for playing around, and I probably shouldn't do that. So let's go back. Let's say, okay, practice. It's all about practice. All right, so this is how you set it up. And as a reminder, when your scenes are all ready, you want to start your virtual camera here in the right, and this is where you're going to connect your virtual camera to Zoom. Okay, and I see Sammy is laughing, and totally deserved, because that was a goof. Okay, so now let's talk about the graphics, because those were just the timers, which is the first component, and those are connected to your streaming software. So now we want to make it look pretty. So we want to add some sort of graphic. So you have seen probably a lot of countdown timers that had something that was looping, an animated graphic. So you don't have to have an animation. You know, we saw on the example, if we go back for a second to this screen, I didn't have an animation. This was just a static image with some text with the instructions, and I didn't actually have to do that. But if you want it to look a little bit more fun, so maybe you want to have something in the corner like this where you have a little bit of an animation, you can do that. So we are going to show how you can actually add those in. So first, let's go to our Ecamm demo, and I'm going to go back to this one where I set up the timer, but I don't have a graphic. So what I can do here is I can add, and I'm going to add an animated one. So let's click on the plus, and I'm going to, my window is not cooperating. So here of course it's not, because this is the day I'm having. All right, I'm going to go into my folder where I have all my countdown timers, and you know what? You should be able to see this. So let's actually go into demo mode. Wouldn't that help? So let's go into demo mode for Ecamm. I've moved the screen around a little bit so that I can access this, but I'm going to, in overlays, click on this one down here. The second one is an animated overlay, which brings open this window. And I have a folder called Countdown Timers. And here's a timer that I'm actually going to show you how I made it in a moment. So let's open this. So here we have this countdown timer. And this is actually, I positioned this on a 16:9. So I'm going to position it over here. Let's do it there. And then I'm going to take my countdown timer and move it here, but all of a sudden it disappeared behind. And that's because in your overlays, it will always stack. The thing on the top of the stack is going to be the thing that shows up first. So right now my circle overlay is above my timer. So I want to drag this circle down so that the time is on top. And then we can just kind of do this. And if we wanted to have words, I can add a text overlay. So that is an option that I would have available to me. Now it stopped looping. So you might have noticed that it started to loop. So I play this video and I've got the circles going, but I want that to keep going. So on Ecamm, you want to have this little drop down here, and I want to loop this. So I want to make sure autoplay is selected so that when I go to this scene, it will start running this movie, this short movie. But I also want it to loop around so that when I get to this scene, it will play. So let's go back. If we go back to this screen, setting my timer, and then I switch to my Ecamm demo, now you can see that it has started looping and it will continue to loop. And if I exit live demo mode, now you can see that I have this countdown timer. We've got this animated graphic and we've got the time in it. So those are the two components that go together. And if you have that animation, you want it to actually loop on the screen. So that's an example with Ecamm. Now I see I've got a few comments here, and thank you so much for people who are joining. I see Andy's here, Alexis, am I saying that right? Patrick, and thank you, that circle timer. I am going to show you how to make that in a moment. All right, so now let's go into OBS. So in OBS here, so this has stopped, but we are going to set up our graphic. So in this case, I'm going to take a graphic and I'm actually just going to drag. The drag and drop is an option. If you have a file nearby, you can just drag it and drop it. So let's say that we are going to have a break and I'm going to put a countdown timer graphic. I'm just dragging it on here from my file folder. Now that was a short graphic and it disappeared because it's not looping. So let's open this source and we want to make sure that it loops. So check off loop, and we want to uncheck show nothing when playback ends because we don't want it to disappear like it just did. So we have this movie file and then we click OK. So now we have this graphic here and we have our timer, which has run out. And so what I want to do, I'm going to just switch to the scene and switch back. We can see the countdown timer start, and then I can go over here and I can position it. Same things happening where the actual graphic is covering the timer. So let's grab the graphic and drag it down. So now the timer is actually over top, and then you can just kind of position the pieces that you want. And once you've got them where you want them, you want to lock those. So now what will happen is whenever when you go from one scene, maybe it's just you on the camera, and then you go to this break, it will start counting down from the time that you set up, and you have your looping graphic. So this is an example of how you can add your graphic, which is the second component. Okay, so a couple of things before I show you how to actually make. I'm going to show two quick examples of how to make a graphic. So the first thing I want to say is that if you are using the virtual camera in Zoom, which is what the lesson is intended for, to bring this timer into your Zoom call, first, I really want you to make use of the spotlight option so that you are in speaker mode and that you are pinned for all of the people who are coming in. If you are not the host of the session, ask your host to spotlight you so that everyone can see the countdown timer. It's not in a tiny little square. The other thing is you want to make sure that if you have any text on there, make it big, because as you may know, and if you don't, I have a video about this, resolution in Zoom is degraded a little bit. So you might have a nice looking graphic, but the other people can't see it as clearly. So try to make things as big as possible. The other option, so you can toggle on group HD, so you can have 720 as your resolution in your Zoom window. But you can also, if you have a business account or education account, you might have the option to bump that up to a 1080, a higher resolution. Or if you have the setup, which I teach in the fixing your blurry virtual camera video, you can also share your screen and have this graphic going on the screen share, which will be the resolution of your monitor. So those are some tips that I want you to consider when it comes to showing this graphic. You don't want really tiny print because it might be blurry for the people on your call. So let's make a graphic. And there are two simple ways that I'm going to show you. Well, one is really simple. The other takes a little bit of work, but I'm going to show you so that you feel like, yeah, that's simple. I can do that. So the first is Canva. Now, Canva, there are paid accounts, the pro account, and there's a free account. And so I'm going to go into here and just say, create a design, and I'm going to do an Instagram story. Now, the reason I'm picking this is that an Instagram story could make a really good sidebar. And so that is what I want to do here, is to make this sidebar. So this is how easy it is. You could change the background color of this to whatever you want. Maybe I just want it to be a light color. And then under elements in Canva, I want you to search circle, which I recently searched. And then here on your preferences, click animated. And if you don't have the paid account, you could click free. Let's see what's available for free. Apply the filters. And here are all sorts of these animated circles. And I I liked this one, and this is sort of what inspired part of that pink one that you saw and what we're going to make. And so here's an example where you could put some text on the top and say, break, we will resume in, we will start in, and then you can have the countdown timer placed here. When you go to download this, you can also change how long this is if you want to make it even shorter, and then you download this as a movie file. So that is one really simple option. Let me know if you are here in the chat, if you use Canva and if this is something that you would consider doing. I think that this is a really easy way to make a sidebar, or you could also make it the full screen. So let's say you actually want it to cover the whole screen. In Canva, just make sure that you're picking that wide dimension, the 16:9 ratio, and then you can put your instructions, you can put your countdown timer, and you can have this animation really, really fast. So you don't have to worry about any of that. Okay, so now let's look at a different example where I want to show you Keynote. So, and yes, I am aware this is for Mac users only. I tried PowerPoint, it's just not that great. So if you are a PowerPoint user and you don't have Keynote, I just recommend that you go to Canva or maybe buy a countdown timer. But for now, I'm going to show you Keynote because this is how we can make this graphic. So I am going to show you how to make this. And I just need to move a few of these things out of the way. Andy, thank you so much. I love the way you actually show us how to make these things. Yeah, you can make them, and it really is not overly complicated. So as I said before, I want to sort of recreate the one that I just showed you on Canva. So you are going to have a few components. You want to have a solid circle and then 2 moving circles. So let's just go into shape. I'm going to drag a circle, and if you want it to stay a circle, hold down Shift and drag it. It will maintain that ratio. And we can drop it, and let's pick a color. So let's just recreate the one that I made earlier. So here we have the circle. Now what I'm actually going to do is just duplicate this object. So now I have a second circle. So we can actually name this if you have your object list up. So I can say solid circle. And then this one is going to be the outer ring. Sounds like space. So this one though, the outer ring, we are going to have that have no fill. We are going to have a border, and I want this to be a line, and I want this to be the same color, but I'm going to drag it. So I'm going to keep holding down Shift and just make it a little bit bigger, and then grab this and just drag it so it's outside. So now I've got this outer ring. Now I want an inner ring. So I am going to, once again, duplicate this ring. I'm going to hold down Shift. I'm going to drag it in a little so it's smaller, and we can adjust that later. This one I want to be white, and then I want to drag this and position it in the middle. So now I have all of the components together. Now we are going to animate them. Now a strange thing about Keynote with animation is that it wants to start it on the side here. So we have to just arrange it. So I'm going to give you the shortcut, which is that you want to go into Arrange, and your inner circle, let's say we want the inner circle to start from the top, the animation. So we're just going to say 45 degrees. So now it's turned. So this will actually, the animation will start from the top. For our outer ring, which you can select out here or on here, we are going to do 225, which is basically 180 plus 45. So 225. And so now this one will start from the bottom. So that's how I've decided to do it. And that's just what I recommend. 40, 45, and 225. We'll have one starting on the top and one starting on the bottom. So now let's animate it. So we've got the outer ring already selected. So let's animate this. So we go over to the top right, click Animate. We are going to add an effect called Line Draw, which is the one that let me know if you know that this is available in PowerPoint, because I couldn't find it. So Line Draw, if we preview this, it actually draws the line around the circle. And you can play around with whether you want it to ease in or not, and how long you want this to happen. I'm just going to leave it as is for just to keep this short. So I've got this line draw. Now let's click on the inner ring, which I actually want to rename inner ring. So the inner ring, we are going to build an effect called line draw. And now you see the line draw. We can preview that and see it going around. So let's go outer ring, preview, starts from the bottom, and then our inner ring. So if we click on build order in the bottom, This is where we can make all of this animation go together. So we actually want these to be connected. So I just drag that up here, and I actually want the inner ring and the outer ring to start at the same time. So I want to say start with build 1 so that outer and inner will actually do this together. So if we preview this, we can see that they start drawing at the same time, and they're just going in different directions. So now let's say we want these to build out. So I am going to click on the outer ring, and we're going to have a build out action, which is going to be the line draw again. So it's going to draw it, but it's going to disappear. I'm going to drag that up here. So now we've got, but we actually do want this after the second build. And now we click on the inner ring, and we want this to be a build out. We're going to add a line draw, and there you see it. And now we drag it up here. But this one, I want the outer and inner to leave together. So let's preview this animation. So you can see you're drawing it, they start from different ones, and then they both disappear. And then we can just loop this over and over. So this is how you make the animation in Keynote. But now I want to make sure that I've got a transparent background. So I click off so that nothing is selected, and I go to Format. And in background on this right, we want to say no fill. Now we have that transparent background. You can also move this shape around if you want, or you can even adjust the background. This doesn't have to be 16 by 9. You can actually make it a square. That's a nice option so that you have a bit more freedom with moving this graphic around. So we are going to now export this to a movie file. And here is where you want to make sure that so it's a movie file. It's going to be self-playing. I get rid of these and just say 0 seconds. And you want this to be a custom resolution, and you want this to be Apple ProRes 4444, and make sure export with transparent backgrounds is checked. If you don't see this, it means you haven't turned your background transparent. So let's now say next. Now we are exporting this, and so we want this. I'm going to put this in my countdown timer folder, and I'm going to call this one pink double circles 2 because I've already made this one. And then we export it. So now we have exported it, and this is what you see when let's see, I think this is it. So this is what it looks like when you actually bring that in as an animated overlay. So I hope that that was something that you can actually imagine yourself doing and making these animations. It's not as complicated as it seems, and you can get creative. You can look for inspiration. You can go to Canva and say, oh, I want to recreate that and play around with it. And there are a lot of people online who teach this stuff and do a great job. Now I see that there is a question. So let's take a look at this question. Will this type of timer be possible to use with MS Teams as well? So you can use the virtual camera with Microsoft Teams, but you'll have to check compatibility. So a couple of the downsides that I have experienced coming into the Microsoft Teams platform. So I can use the virtual camera, but because it sometimes changes the ratio, like sometimes it'll squeeze you into a box. So I've been doing a presentation and people said, we can't actually see your entire presentation. So part of my slides were cut off. But if you had the timer positioned in a way that you knew it wasn't going to be cut off, and then you just want to check which one you have. So always, always, always test. And if in doubt, just Google using their virtual camera with MS Teams, and they'll usually give you some troubleshooting. Often what happens is that they will release an update, and then suddenly your virtual camera is not working anymore. But my main thing with Microsoft Teams is that you want to make sure that it's the ratio, that people can actually see it. And to my knowledge, I don't know that you can kind of stick with the wide, the 16 by 9, but please correct me if I'm wrong. It's not something I use very often. And usually if someone invites me to present to Teams, I'll usually ask them if it's an option to use Zoom because of this ratio. But it's possible it could have been updated since answering that question. So I'm just going to check and see, are there any other? So Patrick is saying in PowerPoint, you can do some line drawing, but I don't think you can do it with circles. You can do it with a square. It's not as simple as Keynote. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's really helpful to know. I looked around. I really want to support my PowerPoint people. So that's why I wanted to show you Canva, because Canva does have free options available that you can export. You cannot export the Canva with a transparent background because it's an animation, it's a movie file, but you could use the chroma key. So if you haven't seen that, I've got that in a few other videos where I show you how to use the chroma key, basically the green screen background. So you could apply that approach and then you can just get rid of the background. That would be OBS. For your Ecamm, I don't think you can green screen and overlay. So you would want to be doing that only if you're using OBS. And hi, Yuli Arts, am I saying that right? Hello from Canada. Okay, any other? So thank you, Andy, for saying this is helpful. Just want to make sure there are no other questions. And if there are questions, I'm always happy to answer them. I do like answering questions. So if it ever seems like I'm just wrapping things up really quickly, it's usually because I don't see any questions and I don't want to just ramble, because that is something that I am prone to do. All right, so if hopefully you are excited about this and you are going to go and try out using your countdown timer. Remember that if you have not connected a virtual camera before, I have the video description linked, or I have the video link just in the description below, so you can check that out. And also do remember, if you want to do some training, my live training is coming up. It's 4 sessions and it's going to be amazing. So I really hope that if this is something you want to get better at, that you will consider joining me, and all the information is linked in the description below. So all the best. Thanks so much for those of you who joined me today. I will see you next time.